We want to start this session. The first session is, first talk is by Tim Hughes. Dr. Tim Hughes is a research team leader, biomedical polymer at CSIRO. And his research interests include design and synthesis of polymers for biomedical applications, and he has quite many, like 17 patent families he has been involved in that, and numerous awards. Let's just listen to him. He's going to talk about development of photocurable resin for 3D printing of soft and elastic medical devices.
So thanks very much, and thank you for the organisers for allowing me to talk today. So I work for CSIRO, and today I'm going to talk about some of our work in developing photocurable resins for 3D printers, in particular ones aimed at soft and elastic properties for biomedical applications. So I guess unlike the earlier session today, which is more clinically focused, we're sort of more at the starting point of things. So I think we can all appreciate that we're experiencing a 3D printing revolution. If you look around you, we're all here because of 3D printing. And if you look at the scale of the industry, it's also indicating it's growing greatly. So in 2015, it was the global industry was valued at around $5 billion, and by 2025, it's going to grow to around $20 billion. At least that's the estimates. So they're quite big numbers. But if you actually compare them to global manufacturing, they're not that big at all, actually. It's only about 0.04% of global manufacturing. So something appears to be holding 3D printing back from achieving its full potential. And arguably, that's the lack of functional resins. So materials that can be directly printed and used as fit-for-purpose parts rather than just prototypes. So in particular, materials that are biocompatible, particularly for long-term implants, materials that are soft and elastic, and materials with high thermal stability are some of the types of materials that there's not a lot of choice currently available for. So at CSIRO, in addition to the metal 3D printing that Lab 22 does, we also work on developing new polymer resins to address some of these unmet needs. So we work on a number of areas, as you can see. But due to time, I'm going to talk about some of our work in the silicone area and materials aimed to produce tough and flexible materials. So if we think about how conventional plastic parts are made, it involves often a two-step process, and the starting point is often a monomer. So this is the basic building block of a polymer, and we do a polymerization process, which is often done at high temperature and high pressures, and that generates our high molecular weight polymer. It's typically a solid or at least a viscous liquid. And then we do some secondary process to shape it. And that might be something like injection molding, and you might need some metal tooling. And again, you're using high temperature and high pressure to eventually make a part that you want. If we compare that to 3D printing, in particular photocurable 3D printing, we're trying to do all these steps all in one step. So we're going from monomer through to a 3D printed part. And we're doing it in a relatively short time under very mild conditions. So typically, for a photocurable process, we're doing exposure times of just a few seconds per layer, and under relatively mild conditions, room temperature up to maybe 70 degrees. So there's a lot of challenges in developing photocurable materials that can have the same properties as conventional materials. And that's made worse by the fact that the 3D printed structures are a layered structure, and therefore they have anisotropic properties. So at CSIRO, we've had a lot of experience in developing photocurable materials for a whole range of industrial and biomedical applications. Some are biodegradable, biostable, and also biodegradable system. And these are various industrial applications. And we saw an opportunity to apply our knowledge in developing fit-for-function photocurable materials to the new area of 3D printing. So we chose to use digital light processing, or DLP, printers as our test bed. And the reason for this is that they're relatively cheap printers, and most importantly is that they're unlocked. Both the software and the resins are unlocked. And that means we can put our own in-house developed materials in printers like this and use them as a test bed to test the formulations. So we're developing photocurable resins, and we think that they can then also be translated to other photocurable 3D printing techniques like SLA and inkjet. So I'm a chemist, scientist, a chemist, so I have to have some structures. So there they are. So photocurable resins are a complicated mixture. Typically, they always contain some monomers, often more than one monomer. And that, as I said earlier, is the building block of the polymer chain. We also have molecules called crosslinkers, and they form the bridges between the polymer chains, and they influence the mechanical properties. Then we have additives. We have additives like initiators to start the chemical reaction. So typically that's a photoinitiator. And that's an example one there. And we also have other additives to stop the reaction. So we have inhibitors, or UV blockers, or UV absorbers. So it's quite a complicated mixture. And they're all mixed together as a liquid. And then we expose it to light using, in the case of DLP, a projector. And we're making cross-linked solids. So in the DLP printing process, we're using a projector, and the projector basically makes an image of a photomask. So we're doing a photolithography process. And we get curing at the bottom of the vat, where the highest light intensity is. And basically, the projector will change the pattern, and we print another layer on top of it. But the light beam goes beyond just where we want curing to go, and you may get unwanted curing. So to stop that, we have inhibitors in the mixture to stop the unwanted polymerization. So you've got to carefully balance the levels of initiator and inhibitor. If you have too much inhibitor, you get no curing. If you have too high initiator, you get overcuring and you get poor shape replication. And there's a sweet spot somewhere in the middle where you get nice controlled curing, and that's where you want to operate. So we've been trying to develop resins for biomedical applications. So the current, and there are commercially available materials available for this already, but the challenge is that many of them are really rigid and hard. And as a result, when they fail by catastrophic failure, and they'll break rather than bend. The other problem is that these type of materials are typically only approved for short-term use or low-risk applications. So our aim was to develop improved materials to address some of these unmet needs. So we wanted materials that could offer high shape replication, so with features less than 100 microns. We wanted a broad range of mechanical properties, in particular materials that bent rather than break, materials which could be characterised as being tough but flexible, and materials with high biocompatibility. And they could be used for a whole range of different biomedical applications. So the way we went about this was making libraries of materials. We'd mix up different ratios of monomers and crosslinkers and additives, and we'd measure the outcome, and then we'd build up a structure-property relationship And from this, we were able to then make a library of materials with a broad range of mechanical properties. And this is measuring the mechanical properties by Instron in tensile testing. We're also able to test the hardness of materials and make a wide range of hardnesses from 25 to 90D. And at the stiff end, they're still quite stiff, but can be bent without breaking. At the more flexible end, down this end, they're very soft and you can bend them multiple times without breaking, and they're elastic, so they return back to the natural state when you let go. So how do they compare to what's commercially available currently? These are some current 3D printing resins that are approved for medical use. And you can see this is measuring the Young's modulus by tensile testing compared to the CSIRO resins in green here. And you can see that they both cover a similar modulus range. There's nothing particularly special there. But if we look at elongation, which is a measure of how much the polymer can be stretched, you see quite a big difference. Here, the commercially available materials, as I said earlier, are very stiff and brittle, and they don't stretch very fast. They're only about 10% and they break. Whereas we can make materials that have comparable Young's modulus, but much higher elongation, up to around 120%. So they behave more like thermoplastics than thermosets. Moreover, we've tested the cytotoxicity of many of these, and they're non-cytotoxic. And we can also print parts with very small features in really high fidelity. So I also want to talk a little bit about our silicon work. This is actually a lot harder than the previous work. The silicons are a much softer material, have a really low TG. So our early attempts at making these designs were pretty poor. And that's because of plastic deformation during the 3D printing process when you lift up the part, peel off the bottom of the vat. But we persisted and we're able to improve the formulations, and you're starting to see that we can make parts that at least start to replicate what we wanted to make. And after a lot of blood, sweat and tears, finally able to make materials with really close replication to the original designs. So these are siloxane-based resins. They're printed on a commercial DLP printers without modification. We get really small features, so this is around 2 centimetres by 1 centimetre. So the features here are less than 50 microns. We have a range of mechanical properties, I think from around 20 to 60 shore hardness. We can sterilise them, and they're non-cytotoxic by cell growth inhibition assay, both with and without medium, with and without serum. So part of the problems with the earlier generations were that they were a bit brittle, and when you stretched them, they tended to rip rather than stretch. So we developed some improved formulations which have much higher elongation. So this can be stretched over 100% without breaking. Eventually it slips out the tweezers. So hopefully what I've been able to show you is that we've been able to develop new photocurable resins designed to meet unmet needs. We've been working on silicon resins that are soft and elastic, more general purpose resins that offer a range of mechanical properties that are tough and flexible. And our approach has been to develop families of materials, develop a structure-property relationship, and that way we can tune the mechanical properties to suit particular applications. And we've demonstrated that these materials have low cytotoxicity and are printable on commercial DLP printers without any modification. So we're pretty confident they can be used in other 3D printer types like SLA and inkjet. And we're seeking partners to commercialise them and looking for applications. So thank you very much.